Today, today was a good day. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Lombardi Time Brews, where I'm your host, John Delray. Today, we are talking about workout bonuses. How many players have them? How does it kind of match up against what the Packers historically do? But the big topic, 12 players who, for a bunch of different reasons, 12 guys who need to show up this offseason, 12 guys who have got to put in the work, who've got to perform well, or else their tenure for the Green Bay Packers may be coming to an end. Maybe not this offseason. That's certainly not the case for some of these guys. Or maybe it's just that the public perception of them has been waning a bit and they need to perform in order to reclaim it. But still, nonetheless, 12 guys who, for different reasons, need to show up. Before we get to that, though, the first thing that I must do is give a huge thank you to our brand new patron, Jim. Mr. Jim, thank you so much for becoming one of our patrons. He entered in at the Become a Legend level, which means that he's going to be part of our fantasy league that we are launching this year. If you're interested in checking out any of that stuff or the memorabilia giveaways for signed Packers stuff, that's going to start as soon as we get up to enough people. So if you're curious, check out the Patreon link down below and you can join us. But sincerely, thank you to Jim, who's been quite literally our largest supporter since the day we aired. It's very cool to have him on the Patreon. So thank you, my friend. Now, let's cover those workout bonuses. The Green Bay Packers have 15 guys this year who have workout bonuses. Jair Alexander, $700,000 last year. He gave that up. He's not giving it up this year by all accounts. Kenny Clark getting another $700,000. Rashawn Gary, $700,000. Josh Jacobs, $600,000. Elton Jenkins, $500,000. Jordan Love, $500,000. Preston Smith, $500,000. Xavier McKinney, one of the new guys, $400,000. Keyshawn Nixon, $200,000. Corey Ballantyne, who was re-signed, they included $100,000 for him. Greg Joseph, new kicker signing, $50,000. Tucker Kraft, $50,000. Sean Ryan, $40,000. Tyler Davis, $20,000. And Christian Welch, $20,000 as well. All told, that is 15 individuals who, in terms of actual monetary value for all 15 combined, it's a little over $5 million, $5,080,000. All of this data coming from overthecap.com. So for the vast majority of these players, what that means is that they must attend, there's some variance here, but they must attend about 80% of the Packers' voluntary workouts throughout the course of the offseason. OTAs certainly are one of them. Now, OTAs started today. They're running for the next few weeks. They are all voluntary workouts, voluntary practices. Yes, they are actually, they're going to be doing, I don't want to say scrimmaging, but it is going to be some offense versus defense type things. This isn't just position drills. This isn't just lifting weights. This is starting to get back to real football. That goes until June 11th, where June 11th to 13th then is mandatory OTAs, where every single player under contract must be there or they give up some money. So for all the guys on this list, come to about 80% of all offseason workouts put together, and you get those bonuses. You may be thinking, $5 million is quite a bit of money. Yeah, the Green Bay Packers, they do workout bonuses like nobody else. In fact, if you go back to Andrew Brandt, if you're unfamiliar with Andrew Brandt, he used to be the Packers VP of Finance. He was Russ Ball before Russ Ball, if you're familiar with Russ Ball at all. And Andrew Brandt has basically admitted, yeah, we loved giving out workout bonuses because it actually got guys to Green Bay in the middle of the summer. And boy, the proof is in the pudding. That tweet put out by Nick Corte, who is a contributor to overthecap.com, he listed out the top 10 franchises historically. This is the historical totals. $95 million for the Green Bay Packers given out, or workout bonuses that they put into contracts, I should say. The next highest team, Buffalo. Another team that maybe has difficulty getting their guys to come up to Buffalo in the offseason, $66 million, and then Cincinnati, $64 million. The very bottom team, Atlanta, at about $250,000. So the Green Bay Packers use workout bonuses far and away more than any other team in the NFL. And it's very proved there, both historically and currently. Now, 15 guys, $5 million, that's a little bit under what they generally do. Generally speaking, a typical year for the Packers is going to actually have 19 to 20 guys actually getting workout bonuses. So a little bit lower this year. And it's partly, I would think, because there's so many draft picks on the team still in their rookie contracts. And for the most part, rookie contracts generally don't include workout bonuses. So certainly something interesting to note here, something unique to how the Green Bay Packers do their business. So speaking of doing business, here's 12 guys that have got to put in the work and perform both this offseason and for some of them, maybe even this coming season. I've got 12 individuals broken up into a number of different categories that they fall into. And number one, the injured. Player number one, Eric Stokes. We all know the deal here. The Packers declined his fifth-year option, probably due in large part, not just because of the financial compensation, but because of the injury difficulties that Eric Stokes has had. And his best year thus far was his rookie year, 2021. Then he did decline in his sophomore year, 2021. He was actually one of the best corners in the league at man coverage. Then all of a sudden, 2022, he wasn't as strong there. His QB rating against went from 78 his rookie year to over 125 then in his sophomore year. Also in that second year, he had 2 penalties in only half the season. His rookie season, he had 3 penalties all year long. And we know how important penalties are for cornerbacks. But play decline, that's one thing, because while he did fall off in his second year, he still was doing some passable things. There were some signs on the field that, better times would come back for Eric Stokes. And if you want to blame Joe Barry too, I understand. Stokes at that time especially was more of a man corner who's not being deployed very often as a man corner. But the big issue here has been his health. We understand that the first injury that he suffered was incredibly debilitating. He's had screws, he's had plates put in. We know this. This has been cataloged over the years. But then last year, perhaps on the part of the Packers organization rushing him back earlier than they should have, I said that at the time, then he dealt with all these hamstring issues as well. If he wants to get a new contract in Green Bay following the season, he has to actually play this season. And by all accounts, it sounds like he's doing it already. Everyone's talked. Matt LaFleur has talked about how he looks fantastic thus far. But you do just have to wonder, after these injuries, is he still going to have the same speed that he always did, which was such a hallmark of his game his rookie year? He's going to have to show up to get another contract in Green Bay. Number 2, speaking of hamstrings. In his 2 years in the league, 118 targets for 69 catches, 1,033 yards, and 12 touchdowns. He's got all of the physical characteristics. He is perhaps the best run-blocking wide receiver on the team as well. And yet, for some reason, whenever I speak about Christian Watson, I feel so much like Philatites from Hercules. If you recall that one scene voiced by Danny DeVito where he's talking about Achilles, he said, hey, he's got it all. He could take the jabs. He could do the hook. He could bob. He could wave. He could do all these things. But that heel of his, with Christian Watson, it's really no different by so many accounts in terms of like being a physical specimen amongst the most perfect ever. He's got the speed. When he's on the field and when he's genuinely healthy on the field, he can produce like an elite receiver in the league. But that hamstring of his, and we're going to have to see if it's better this year or not. Because realistically, and maybe it's a little too early to say this, but he is entering year 3. And after this season is where the Packers love to discuss with especially second, third, fourth round guys who don't have that 5th-year option. Perhaps a contract extension. If he has injury difficulties again this year, especially because of that hamstring, are the Packers still going to approach him next year? Probably not. So while it does feel a little early to talk about Christian Watson, and it doesn't need to sound all doom and gloom or anything like that, because I do believe better health is on the horizon for him. It sounds like they've got these problems began to be figured out. But the fact remains that if he has another hamstring injury-riddled year, chances are the Packers don't approach him about a contract extension next offseason. And that would be a major loss for both the Green Bay Packers ceiling and Christian Watson. Moving on to category number 2. Keep Jordan Morgan off the field. It's a bunch of offensive linemen that have been impacted by the selection of Jordan Morgan in the first round of the draft. And maybe I could have put these under a different category, like new arrivals, like a couple other guys that are coming up. But these guys felt different. And every single one of them, Sean Ryan, Josh Myers, Caleb Jones, Rasheed Walker, they could potentially be moved down the depth chart because of where Jordan Morgan might play, how often he might play, and how well he does play. So let's look at these a little bit more one by one. Realistically, Josh Myers belongs on this list in several different categories because even if he does the line calls well, like offensive line coach Luke Butkus has talked about, and offensive coordinator Adam Stenovich has talked about how he's emerged as one of the leaders of the offensive line room with Elton Jenkins, even if all of those things are true. What also remains true is the fact that Josh Myers has not been the incarnate of Corey Linsley that the Packers hoped for when they drafted him in the second round. He's entering the last year of his contract. And there's multiple avenues that it's foreseeable that the Packers don't re-sign him following this coming season. Maybe Jacob Monk, the day 3 selection for the Packers, shows his prowess at center. Maybe the Packers want to fulfill the quote-unquote Hall of Fame potential of Zach Tom and kick him inside and figure out a solution at the tackle spots. The thing is, there's multiple avenues to see Josh Myers not being the center after this year. Some fans are clamoring for him not to be the starting center this year. But Josh Myers has got to show up, and he has to block better than when he's done the last couple of years. Looking at the cases of Caleb Jones and Sean Ryan, think back before the draft. These guys were both substantially higher on the depth chart before the Jordan Morgan selection. Sean Ryan penciled in probably at starting right guard. He had done that rotation with John Runyon Jr. They seemingly had no other options. Pencil him in. Caleb Jones, quite possibly the swing tackle following Tenuta's injury issues and the departure of Yash Nyman in free agency and David Bakhtiari. Maybe now Caleb Jones is going to be the swing tackle after sticking on the 53. Well, now it's foreseeable that neither one of them may have those positions any longer. If Jordan Morgan, like I've theorized, if Jordan Morgan starts his rookie year at right guard, then Sean Ryan becomes the backup there. But Jordan Morgan might be more adept at a tackle. His future might be a tackle. Maybe he's going to be right guard while also being the swing tackle this year. It's not too much to ask. Zach Tom, while not starting at right guard, did do some similar things in learning all 4 positions at once his rookie year. So it's at least possible. All of a sudden then, Caleb Jones and Sean Ryan, they're both farther down the depth chart than they were before the draft, and it's because of one guy. Both of them have lower depth chart standing than they did. And then the last one, Rasheed Walker, he did play very well last year, especially after the rotation with Yash Nyman stopped. Over 515 pass blocking snaps last year, Rasheed Walker is credited by PFF with giving up 33 pressures and 6 sacks. And Brian Gutekunst has said that Rasheed Walker is capable of playing both sides of the line, left tackle or right tackle. Gutekunst has also been incredibly complimentary of Rasheed Walker, talking about how well he played at tackle. But with Jordan Morgan, the Packers have also been adamant that his first chance is going to come at left tackle. They're going to start him there. It's where he played all of college. As I've covered before, of the offensive linemen drafted this year by the Packers or signed as UDFAs in the case of Donovan Jennings, Jordan Morgan is perhaps the least proven versatile. He's projected to be highly versatile, but in terms of actual experience on the field, Jordan Morgan hasn't played anywhere besides left tackle. So he's going to get his first chance there. What does that mean for Rasheed Walker? Does that mean that the former 7th round pick is suddenly going to find himself on the bench after last year? Maybe he's got to kick over to right tackle and they will move Zach Tom inside, which has a whole world of consequences for a number of guys. We will find out. But those are 4 players that were heavily impacted by Jordan Morgan, and their sole mission right now, besides just getting better for themselves, should be to keep the first-round pick off the field. Category 3, established players in some ways who need to reclaim success. Number 1, Jair Alexander. I know the vibes right now around Jair are immaculate, but look, at $21 million a year, he still is the highest paid cornerback in the NFL. And that's based upon annual average of his salary, $21 million. Now, Antoine Winfield Jr. of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers did just upend that a little. Per over the cap, he got $21,025,000 a year just to get him barely above Jair. But Jair signed that contract now a couple of years ago, and he still holds that mantle. Generally, when you see these market resetting deals, it's not too long before someone else comes up and upends them. Well, in the case of Jair, he's held on to it for a bit now. The only problem, he hasn't really played like that guy in a while. And he does have certain injuries now as a part of his portfolio that may not allow him to fully be that guy again. And much like in the case of Eric Stokes, if you want to blame Joe Barry for it, I get it. But the fact remains that while Jair Alexander could still be an elite coverage corner, we have not seen that consistency week in and week out for a little bit of time now. And I'm not saying at all that the Packers are going to move on from Jair or that like he's at risk of being cut or next offseason is his last. No. The Packers are going to ride it out with Jair beyond the shadow of a doubt. But in terms of reclaiming his status league-wide, re-enter the conversations of the league's best corner, become kind of the apple of so many Packers fans' eyes, because even with the immaculateness right now of his vibes, a lot of people have admittedly soured on Jair Alexander. But it's important to acknowledge that even at his current pay level, he can't play the slot. Like it was projected he would be one of the best slot corners in the NFL earlier in his career. And ultimately, you don't want him there anyway because he's so good at coverage. But it does kind of take away from his versatility a little bit. And he's got those shoulder injuries, which means he cannot tackle like he once did earlier in his career. His run defense, if you go back and look over the last few years, early career Jair before these shoulder injuries was a different guy covering the run than the one that they've rolled out for the last 2 years. For Jair to re-enter the conversations, really, of being amongst the league's top corners like his pay shows, he does have to have a strong year. And I'll give full credit where it's due. All of the coaches have talked about how mentally committed Jair is right now. There's no doubt about that. Showing up early before phase 2, multiple weeks, working with the trainers, getting that extra work in, staying there between off-season phases. And that's compared to a guy who last year had $700,000 in workout bonuses on his contract and didn't even show up. Maybe because he was disgruntled with Joe Barry. Maybe he just didn't want to. Whatever. We never got an official reason. It seems like he's completely turned it around now. But now his play needs to be there as well. Looking at another guy who fits into this category of an established player who needs to reclaim some success, A.J. Dillon. Last year was his chance, right? We had talked about, like, he's got the body of someone who could be a bell cow back. Like, he could do it. And then all of a sudden, Aaron Jones gets hurt. A.J. Dillon starts playing a world more, and we just see the same guy. We never saw any type of escalation from Dillon's play. We saw the same problems. Godzilla losing his footing or getting brought down too easily for a man of his size. In the 9 games last year where he had 10 or more rush attempts, he eclipsed 4 yards per carry in only 2 of them. And now they bring in a new guy who is very, very used to being a bell cow. You know, Aaron Jones never had it in his career to be a bell cow back. Well, Josh Jacobs does. Josh Jacobs does in a big way, playing for a lot of Raider games up to 85% of their snaps. Josh Jacobs can be a bell cow. And then they also spend a 3rd-round pick, a top 100 pick, on a running back from USC in the form of Marshawn Lloyd. So where does that fit A.J. Dillon in, who just re-signed a contract in about the friendliest financial way possible for the Packers? Is he maybe now going to take some of the H-back responsibilities? Ben Sermon's running back coach said he believes he's certainly capable. But even one of my favorite Packer analysts out there, a guy who's truly a master at breaking down film more than I think anybody else out there, Dusty Evil, he says, hey, hold on. We have right to be skeptical about A.J. Dillon going and playing H-back because the pony package that we saw from the Packers that employed Dillon as more often as a lead back just necessarily didn't work. And the Packers did abandon it for good reason. And it's not because the willingness wasn't there. It's because his angles, his technique and blocking sometimes left something to be desired. So now if we roll him out at H-back, is that really a career longevity plan like we were hoping for A.J. Dillon? I mean, not. The the point is for AJ Dillon, there are several different routes that this could go. Maybe he does fill in that role tremendously, becomes the H-back, and he becomes the new John Kuhn forever and ever. Amen. Or maybe it doesn't work. Maybe he gets cut this year because they want to keep Emmanuel Wilson. Maybe he fills in for injury this year and it all goes perfectly and he gets a big contract next offseason. Or maybe he just becomes a washout average running back with lower contract values than the average. For AJ Dillon, they all seem within the realm of possibility. And then one last guy. And I've been more critical on him than probably anyone else on the team, but let's go with Royce Newman. Look, I know. It's hard to even say this, right? But like the dude is still on the roster. He still has a chance to reclaim some success. And yeah, the dude has had some success. His rookie season, he played over 1,000 snaps at right guard. His pass blocking efficiency was 97 per PFF. And yet he is one of the only players that I know of that over the course of a rookie contract seemingly has gotten worse every year of his career. 2021, 1,084 snaps, 97 pass blocking efficiency. 2022, 451 snaps, 95.8. 2023, only 183 snaps and a pass blocking efficiency of 95. His status on the roster is now on life support. His cap number comes in at about $3 million. He's one of the highest paid offensive players on the team. And yet they signed Andre Dillard, who may be converting to the inside. They drafted Jacob Monk. They have Jordan Morgan, who may play inside. Other guys can play inside. You see what I'm saying? Royce Newman is farther and farther down the depth chart because of all these new additions. Because he hasn't shown improvement in quite some time. There is still a chance he makes this roster. But it's going to take a really strong offseason to do it. Next up, category 4, as we get to our last 3 guys on this list. New arrivals spell trouble. And I don't got to go into great detail here, but how about kicker Anders Carlson? Yeah, they signed Greg Joseph. He's an established vet around the league. Has he been the world's greatest kicker? No. But last year, it didn't really seem as though Carlson was going to have any competition. It really was. And for most of camp, it truly was because he was the only one on the roster that they were just going to hand him the job as a rookie and say, go do your thing. And then he did his thing, which was inconsistent. Like there were some weeks where he was great. Remember, he started off the season perfect for about a month and then it wavered. Right. And Greg Joseph, his historical track record throughout the course of his career is really no different than Anders Carlson's 1 year. Joseph has been highly erratic throughout the course of his career, very inconsistent. But from the sounds of it, and special teams coordinator Rich Bisaccia, it sounds like Anders Carlson now finds himself in a true competition to be the Packers kicker, which he couldn't say last year. Carlson has to nail this offseason in order to keep his job. And then the other one, number 2 in this category, Sean Clifford. Look, Sean Clifford's place on this team, unquestioned. It's more so. We said it right at the draft. When they drafted Michael Pratt, got one of the steals of the draft in being able to get him in round 7. Packers aren't going to keep both of these guys forever. Brian Gutekunst has said that they'd like to get back to the old Packer way that was started under Ron Wolf of basically drafting a quarterback every year so that you can nurture them, develop them, and then flip them for draft assets in the future. Well, that means someone's got to go. And I'm not saying right now. I think it's much more likely that one of these 2 individuals, Pratt or Clifford, would find themselves on the trade block next offseason if development goes according to plan. But nonetheless, maybe Clifford has all the intangibles, but maybe Pratt's the better thrower. Maybe Clifford is more mobile, but maybe Pratt is more clutch. So what I'm saying is, it's not clear at this juncture that Clifford will be miles ahead of Michael Pratt as a quarterback. So how does that leave it? We can say that the long-term prospects of Sean Clifford being a Packer are at least a little bit more questionable now than they were before Michael Pratt was drafted and the Packers got that tremendous draft value. One of them is going to wind up not being a Packer long-term. And that is damaging to Sean Clifford. And then the last one, category 5, the last player on this list. Got to make the most of this chance. Let's say it that way. Got to make the most of this chance Brenton Cox Jr. Look, he was a UDFA. And maybe the UDFA status of him wasn't because of his play on the field, but it doesn't change the fact that he was a UDFA. Then came in last year. Everyone was very excited about the steal that the Packers got in the UDFA, and then he barely saw the field. According to PFF, he played 5 defensive snaps last year, 8 special team snaps, and he didn't log a tackle or a pressure. And the Packers, to their logic, to their thinking here, they didn't massively address edge this offseason like a lot of people thought that they might. They didn't draft a Marshawn Kneeland. They didn't go and draft others. Instead, right now, partly maybe because Enegbare's mystery injury that isn't a fully torn ACL, according to Matt LaFleur, maybe it's because he's actually going to be good to go pretty soon. But while Enegbare is out, Brenton Cox Jr. is going to be pretty clearly edge 4, defensive end 4 on the depth chart. And this is his chance to carve out a nice role as at least a rotational pass rusher. If he can't do that in this time frame, and then he gets knocked back to edge rusher 5, it becomes a lot harder for him to get snaps. It becomes a lot harder for him to showcase his ability league-wide. And then it's a question of how far away is irrelevancy for him. And that's not to be overly dramatic. It's the reality. For a lot of these guys, a lot of these 7th round UDFA guys, no matter how talented they are, they still have to make the most of their opportunities. And Brenton Cox Jr. is being handed a pretty golden one right now to see the field more and to do something with it. Last year, he had very small opportunities. And we see like he didn't do a ton with it. But now they've kind of rolled out a red carpet to say, hey, as long as Enegbare is out, take it. We're begging you, take it. And here's hoping that he can. Because while these are 12 individuals that ultimately have to play well, either this offseason or this year, for their immediate future, for their long-term future, for their status with the fans, for public perception, whatever, all 12 of these guys have something to prove to somebody. I know I'm rooting for all 12 of them because that's my role in all this. I want to see the team win the Super Bowl, which means all 12 of these guys performing the best they possibly can would be great. They just happen to find themselves on all different lists. So join me on Wednesday for Lombardi Time Brews live at 4 o'clock, regularly scheduled. And then it's going to go out probably Friday morning. I think I'm going to record it Thursday night because I am on vacation this weekend. But coming out Friday is going to be surveying the storylines of OTAs, then since they will be formally out there. And Matt LaFleur talks at a podium tomorrow, it being Tuesday. So there's going to be things to talk about. I'm going to address all the storylines on Friday. Then one programming note, next week, Monday, happens to be Memorial Day for us here in the States. I am on vacation, a long weekend for me. Nothing coming out next Monday. So I would see you then next Wednesday for LTB Live. So thanks so much for joining me here on Lombardi Time Brews. Do hope you had a fantastic weekend. And as always, go Pack Go.